Andrew sat in the police station holding a small velvet box containing a sapphire he had paid $8,000 for 3 hours earlier. The stone caught fluorescent light beautifully, its deep blue color appearing genuine to Andrew's untrained eye, appearing exactly like the investment opportunity Niran and Pla had presented it as Thai sapphire purchased at family wholesale price, easily resold in America for $15,000 to $20,000, perfect opportunity for smart traveler to fund his trip and more. The police officer examined the gemstone briefly, handed it back to Andrew with expression mixing sympathy and mild contempt. "This is glass, sir. Very good glass, but glass. Not sapphire. This scam is very common in Bangkok. Many tourists buy these stones every day. But they showed me certificates," Andrew said. "Export documents, gemological authenticity papers, government stamps. Everything looked official." "Yes, sir. The documents are also fake. Very professional fake, but fake. The jewelry shop, the certificates, the whole business, all part of scam operation. Very organized, very common. Can you arrest them? I know exactly where the shop is. I can show you." "Sir, the shop is probably closed already. These operations move frequently. And technically, this is civil matter you agreed to buy. You paid, you received goods. That you believed goods were more valuable than they are is not criminal scam under Thai law, is buyer error. We can file report, but recovering your money is very unlikely." Andrew understood what the officer was politely explaining. He had been scammed. Completely, professionally, by people who ran this operation daily, who had identified him as ideal mark within minutes of meeting him, who had spent 3 days building his trust before executing the sale, who were now gone with his $8,000 while he held a piece of glass worth perhaps $50. He was a 48-year-old professional photographer, world traveler who had been to 30 countries, creator of content about authentic local experiences, writer of articles warning tourists about common travel mistakes. And he had fallen for one of Bangkok's most notorious, most documented, most frequently warned about scams, the gem scam that caught hundreds of tourists monthly, that was described in every guidebook, that appeared on every Bangkok Scams to Avoid website. He had fallen for it because he believed he was too smart to be scammed, because Niran and Pla had made him feel special rather than manipulated, because the trap had been baited with friendship and ego rather than fear and pressure. This is a story of how 3 days of trust turned into $8,000 of expensive education. If you've been enjoying the stories I create, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Your support is crucial for the growth of this channel and helps me dedicate time to making these videos despite my commitment to a full-time job. Thank you for being here. Andrew Wallace arrived in Bangkok with professional confidence and personal naivety, a combination that made him perfect target for scammers who understood that the travelers most certain of their street smarts were often the easiest to manipulate. He had been traveling professionally for 12 years, freelancing for travel magazines and websites, documenting local cultures and authentic experiences around the world. His portfolio included work from Southeast Asia, South America, Eastern Europe, Africa destinations where tourist scams were supposedly rampant, but where Andrew had navigated successfully without ever being victimized. His secret, he believed, was treating locals as humans rather than service providers, learning basic language phrases, researching cultural customs, avoiding obvious tourist traps like gem shops and massage parlors that charged foreign prices, eating where locals ate, staying in neighborhoods where tourists were rare. Thailand was his first visit to the country despite years of photographing Asia. He arrived with typical photographer's equipment, 2 camera bodies, several lenses, laptop for editing, drone for aerial shots, and with plan to spend 2 weeks in Bangkok and northern Thailand, documenting street life, markets, temples, ordinary Thai people living authentic lives rather than performing for tourists. His first 3 days, Andrew executed his standard approach, stayed in a modest guest house in a non-touristy neighborhood, ate at street stalls where menus weren't translated, practiced his limited Thai phrases with vendors who appreciated his effort, photographed daily life in markets and residential streets where foreign photographers were uncommon enough that people were curious rather than annoyed. He felt validated in his approach when other tourists at his guest house complained about being overcharged, harassed by tuk-tuk drivers, pressured by shop owners. Andrew hadn't experienced any of this, he explained to them, because he engaged with Thailand authentically rather than as consumer, because locals could tell he respected their culture, because treating people like humans rather than merchants changed the dynamic completely. The other tourists listened with a mix of admiration and skepticism. Andrew's confidence about his immunity to tourist problems felt either enlightening or arrogant depending on whether you believed successful travel was about strategy or luck. Andrew met Niran on his fourth day at Wat Pho, the Temple of the Reclining Buddha, one of Bangkok's major tourist attractions. Andrew was photographing architectural details when Niran approached, commenting knowledgeably about the temple's history and pointing out photographic angles Andrew might not have considered. Niran was 33, dressed casually in jeans and polo shirt, spoke excellent English with British accent, suggesting quality education. He explained he was Thai but had studied in London for several years. Worked in Bangkok's tourism industry but not in typical tour guide capacity, he helped travel companies develop cultural content, consulted for hotels on authentic local experiences. Essentially did professional work similar to what Andrew was doing. They talked for nearly an hour. Niran asked intelligent questions about Andrew's photography, shared his own observations about Bangkok's changes over the years, offered suggestions about lesser-known temples and markets that would provide better content than tourist-heavy locations. He seemed genuinely interested in Andrew's work rather than trying to sell services or extract money. When Andrew mentioned he was looking for authentic street life to photograph, Niran offered to show him some neighborhoods tourists never found, areas where Bangkok's real culture was visible rather than performed. He gave Andrew his phone number, suggested they could meet the next day if Andrew was interested, emphasized there was no charge he enjoyed, showing his city to people who actually cared about culture, rather than just collecting Instagram photos. Andrew was pleased. This was exactly the kind of local connection he sought when traveling, the authentic guide relationship that couldn't be purchased through tour companies, the insider access that came from treating locals as equals rather than employees. Niran seemed like genuine friend rather than service provider, seemed to appreciate Andrew's approach to travel photography, seemed to be offering time and knowledge freely because he respected Andrew's authentic interest in Thai culture. They met the next day as planned. Niran took Andrew to a residential neighborhood in Thonburi, across the river from tourist Bangkok, where traditional wooden houses still existed, where morning markets served only locals, where Andrew's camera attracted curious stares from people unaccustomed to foreign photographers. The experience was exactly what Andrew needed: authentic Thai life, genuine cultural documentation, none of the performative tourism he had been trying to avoid. Over lunch at a small restaurant where the menu was entirely in Thai, Niran told Andrew about his family. His parents still lived in their family house in Bangkok's Old Quarter. His sister ran a small business. His cousins worked various jobs around the city. He talked about growing up in Bangkok during its rapid development, about watching traditional neighborhoods disappear under modernization, about trying to preserve authentic Thai culture while also embracing change. The conversation felt genuine. Nothing about it suggested Niran was working toward a scam. Andrew reciprocated with stories about his own background, his travels, his philosophy about documentary photography. They were building friendship based on shared interests and mutual respect, or so Andrew believed. On their third date together, Niran introduced Andrew to Pla, his girlfriend. She was 24, pretty, worked as translator for business clients, spoke perfect English with American accent from studying in California. She joined them for coffee, asked Andrew about his travels, shared her own observations about Thailand's tourism industry and how most foreigners miss the country's real culture. Pla was charming and intelligent, made Andrew feel like his approach to travel was not just correct, but admirable. She laughed at his stories about other tourists' mistakes, praised his Thai language attempts, suggested additional neighborhoods and markets he should photograph. Like Niran, she seemed genuinely interested in Andrew's work rather than looking for financial opportunity. The three of them spent an afternoon together visiting a floating market outside Bangkok. Niran and Pla paid for their own transportation and food, refused Andrew's offers to cover costs, maintained the dynamic of friendship rather than service relationship. They took photos together, joked easily, made plans to meet again the next day to visit Niran's family house, where Andrew could photograph traditional Thai domestic architecture. Andrew felt fortunate. Many travelers spend weeks in a country without making genuine local friends, without accessing authentic cultural experiences beyond tourist performances. He had found real Thai people who appreciated his approach, who were willing to share their time and knowledge freely, who seemed to enjoy his company rather than his money. That evening, Andrew posted on his social media about meeting Niran and Pla, about how approaching travel with respect and genuine interest opened doors that tourist attitudes kept closed, about how his 3 days with them had provided more authentic cultural insight than weeks of typical tourist activities could have provided. His followers responded with enthusiasm, said they aspired to travel the way Andrew traveled, asked for tips about making genuine local connections. Andrew felt validated. His approach to travel was working exactly as intended, proving his belief that treating locals as humans rather than service providers created authentic relationships and authentic experiences. What Andrew didn't know was that every element of these 3 days had been carefully orchestrated. Niran approaching him at Wat Pho was targeting, not coincidence. Pla's introduction was planned escalation, not casual meeting of girlfriend. Their refusal to accept payment was investment, not generosity. Their shared interests and respect for his work were performance, not genuine admiration. In Thai scam networks, particularly the organized gem scams that operate in Bangkok, the initial approach is never about immediate money extraction. The first days are investment in building trust, creating friendship, making the target feel special and sophisticated rather than naive and targeted. The scammers are professionals who understand psychology better than they understand gems. They know that tourists who believe they're too smart to be scammed are most vulnerable once trust is established, that people will ignore obvious warning signs if they believe they've been specially selected based on their character rather than their vulnerability. On their fourth day together, Niran invited Andrew to his family's house for traditional Thai meal. The house was in an older Bangkok neighborhood. Traditional wooden structure showing years of habitation, family photos on walls, shrines to ancestors, everything suggesting authentic Thai domestic life rather than tourist performance. Niran's mother greeted them warmly. His father spoke limited English, but smiled and shook Andrew's hand. His sister was friendly and curious about Andrew's photography. The meal was elaborate, multiple Thai dishes prepared over hours, served family style with genuine hospitality that made Andrew feel honored to be included. During dinner, conversation turned to family businesses. Niran's sister mentioned she worked in gem and jewelry export, family business that had operated for 3 generations, supplying sapphires and rubies to international buyers. She explained that Thailand was one of the world's major sources of precious stones, that Bangkok had enormous gem district where wholesale trading happened, that many Thai families had been in this business for generations. Andrew asked interested questions. This was exactly the kind of authentic local business story he might write about, the non-tourist economy that actually sustained Thai families, the real Bangkok the tourists never saw. Niran's sister was modest about the business, said it was small family operation, nothing like the massive gem companies, just supplying stones to specific international clients who had been buying from her family for years. After dinner, Niran's father brought out some gemstones to show Andrew sapphires and rubies in various cuts, explaining through Niran's translation about quality grades, color variations, how gems were valued in international markets. Andrew photographed the stones with permission, thinking this could be interesting content about traditional Thai business practices. As they were leaving, Niran's sister mentioned casually that next day was special export day when family was meeting with government officials to get export licenses for international shipment. If Andrew was interested in seeing how legitimate gem business operated, he was welcome to observe it might make interesting content for his travel articles about real Thai commerce rather than tourist markets. Andrew accepted the invitation immediately. This was exactly the authentic access he sought, the behind-scenes look at actual Thai business that tourists never experienced, the kind of content that would distinguish his work from typical travel photography. He didn't recognize that the entire evening had been choreographed, the family house was borrowed or rented for occasions like this. The mother and father and sister were actors in the scam network. The gems shown were real enough to photograph well, but not particularly valuable. The whole performance was designed to establish legitimacy and create Andrew's interest in what would come next. The next morning, Niran picked up Andrew in a car and drove to what appeared to be a jewelry district streets lined with gem shops, wholesale dealers, people in business attire carrying briefcases, everything suggesting legitimate commercial activity. They entered a building where Niran's sister had a small office, walls lined with display cases showing various gemstones, professional appearance suggesting established business. Several Thai people were there, some Andrew recognized from the family dinner, others who appeared to be business associates. There was energy of activity, people on phones negotiating in Thai, paperwork being organized, the atmosphere of busy commercial operation preparing for important transaction. Niran's sister explained the day's business. They had secured special government export licenses that allowed them to sell certain gems at wholesale prices to international buyers, but the licenses were time-limited, good only for the day of issuance, meant to prevent gem smuggling while allowing legitimate international trade. Foreign buyers who had been pre-approved by Thai government could purchase at wholesale prices and export legally, taking advantage of Thailand's position as major gem source. She showed Andrew the export licenses, official-looking documents with government stamps, lists of approved gemstones with wholesale prices, regulatory language about legal export procedures. Everything appeared bureaucratic and legitimate, the kind of paperwork that would exist in regulated industry. Then Pla arrived, apparently for separate business purpose. She was surprised to see Andrew there, chatted briefly, then noticed the export licenses. She examined them with interest, then turned to Andrew with sudden idea. "You're American, right? Do you know anyone in America who might be interested in gemstones?" These export licenses are incredible opportunity. Wholesale prices are usually only available to established international dealers, but these special licenses allow any foreign buyer to purchase at wholesale during license validity period. You could buy sapphires at 40% of American retail price, export them legally, resell them in America for huge profit. Andrew hesitated. This was starting to feel like sales pitch rather than cultural observation opportunity. But Pla and Niran both assured him there was no pressure. They just wanted him to understand the opportunity because most foreigners never got access to legitimate wholesale prices, only to tourist gem shops that marked up prices 5 or 10 times above wholesale. Niran's sister showed Andrew specific stones, high-quality sapphires that would retail in American jewelry stores for $15,000 to $20,000 each, available today only at wholesale price of $6,000 to $8,000 because of the special export license. She explained that international jewelry dealers made fortunes through this kind of price arbitrage, buying wholesale in Thailand and selling retail in Western markets. Andrew's skepticism was competing with his interest. The setup seemed legitimate: real business office, real government documents, real gemstones, family business operating for generations. And the basic economics made sense. Thailand, as gem source country, would have lower prices than American retail. Opportunity for profit through international arbitrage was real principle of commodity trading. Pla said she was going to purchase several stones herself, was planning to resell them to jewelry contacts in California, would make probably $10,000 profit on $25,000 investment. She showed Andrew her American ID and credit cards, proof of her American residence, and access to American gem market, making the opportunity seem even more legitimate. The final piece of the setup came from Niran. He took Andrew aside, spoke quietly, said he wanted to be honest as friend. His sister's business was legitimate. Export licenses were real. But Andrew should be careful because gem market was complex and buying stones required expertise. Unless Andrew actually knew gem dealers in America who would purchase from him, he shouldn't buy anything. The opportunity was real, but only valuable for people with proper market connections. This warning, intended as friendship advice, had opposite effect. It made Andrew trust the entire setup more, made him believe Niran was protecting him rather than manipulating him, made the opportunity seem genuine rather than suspicious. Andrew spent the next 2 hours at the jewelry office, watching Pla and others make purchases, seeing paperwork being processed, observing what appeared to be legitimate commercial activity. His skepticism was gradually eroding under the weight of apparent legitimacy and the social pressure of friendship. Niran and Pla didn't pressure him directly. Instead, they talked about their own purchases, showed him the gems they were buying, explained their plans for resale in America. Pla mentioned that her jewelry contact in California had confirmed he would purchase sapphires from her at 15% markup over her purchase price, guaranteed buyer, making her investment completely safe. She offered to include Andrew in this arrangement. If he purchased sapphires, she could sell them to her California contact along with her own stones. Andrew wouldn't need to find his own buyers, would simply earn profit through her established relationship. The setup eliminated the risk Andrew had worried about, provided guaranteed purchaser for whatever stones he bought. Andrew's internal dialogue went something like this. This seems almost too good to be true, which makes me suspicious. But I've spent 4 days with Niran and Pla. We've become genuine friends. They've shown me their family and business. Everything appears legitimate. The export licenses look official. The business office is real. Other people are making purchases. Pla is buying stones herself and offering to include me in her sales arrangements. If this was scam, why would they have invested 4 days building friendship? Why would they show me real government documents? Why would Pla risk her own money if stones weren't genuine? And Niran specifically warned me to be careful, which a scammer wouldn't do. Maybe my skepticism is actually preventing me from recognizing legitimate opportunity. Maybe I'm being too cautious because I've been conditioned to distrust everything in foreign countries. The rationalization was aided by his ego. Andrew prided himself on recognizing authentic local experiences, on understanding cultures deeply enough to distinguish genuine from fake, on being street-smart traveler who saw what others missed. Believing this was scam meant admitting he had been fooled for 4 days, that his confidence in his ability to read people was misplaced, that he was exactly the naive tourist he believed himself to be too sophisticated to be. Accepting the opportunity as legitimate allowed him to maintain his self-image while potentially making significant profit that would fund months of additional travel. The stones he was considering cost $8,000, significant amount but manageable from his savings. And if Pla's California contact purchased them for 15% markup, Andrew would make $1,200 profit for basically doing nothing except recognizing good opportunity when it presented itself. He made the decision. He selected 3 sapphires that Niran's sister certified as high quality, paid $8,000 by credit card, received official-looking receipts and export documentation, got the stones in a velvet box with gemological certificates. Pla made her purchases simultaneously, suggested they celebrate together, took photos of them both holding their new gemstones, posted on social media about their successful business day. Andrew felt excited and slightly nervous excited about the profit potential. Nervous about having just spent $8,000 on gems he knew nothing about, but reassured by Pla's involvement and the apparent legitimacy of the entire operation. The first crack in Andrew's confidence came 2 hours later. He and Pla were having coffee while waiting for Niran to finish his own business. Andrew mentioned he wanted to get the sapphires appraised independently, just for his own records. Wanted proper documentation of their value for insurance purposes. Pla became slightly uncomfortable, said it wasn't necessary since they already had gemological certificates from Thai authorities, that American appraisers would just confirm what the certificates already stated, that it was waste of money to pay for redundant appraisal. But if Andrew wanted to, he should wait until he returned to America, since Thai appraisers would simply reference the same certificates that came with the stones. Her mild resistance made Andrew more determined. He looked up gem appraisal services in Bangkok, found one with good online reviews in tourist district, said he wanted to go there immediately. Pla reluctantly agreed to accompany him, but suggested they wait until next day when Niran could come along, since the appraiser might try to overcharge foreign customers if they went alone. Andrew insisted on going immediately. Something about Pla's discomfort was triggering his long-dormant skepticism, making him want verification before the trail got any colder. They took a taxi to the appraisal shop, where Andrew presented his sapphires to the gemologist. The gemologist examined the stones under magnification for less than 30 seconds before delivering his verdict. These are synthetic sapphires. Very good quality synthetic, but not natural stones. Maybe $50 value each, not $8,000. Andrew felt his stomach drop. But I have certificates, export documents, everything was officially licensed. Sir, the certificates are fake. Very professional fake, but fake. This is common scam in Bangkok, very organized. You paid $8,000 for maybe $150 worth of synthetic stones. Pla had disappeared. When Andrew looked around the shop, she was gone, had left while he was talking to the gemologist. He tried calling, her phone was disconnected. He tried calling Niran, also disconnected. He went back to the jewelry office building. The office was empty, no sign of the business that had been operating there hours earlier. He had been scammed completely, professionally, by people who had invested 4 days building his trust before executing $8,000 sale. Every element had been choreographed: the temple meeting, the family dinner, the business office, the export licenses, Pla's participation in the purchase, everything designed to make him believe he was getting legitimate opportunity rather than being systematically defrauded. Andrew went to tourist police, filed report, received the sympathetic but unhelpful response that this was civil matter, that technically he had agreed to purchase and receive goods, so no crime had been committed under Thai law, that recovering his money was nearly impossible since the scammers had almost certainly moved to different location and were probably working under false identities. He posted warning on social media, detailed description of how the scam had operated. His followers were sympathetic, but some couldn't resist pointing out that this exact scam was described in every Bangkok guidebook, was listed on every common tourist scams website, that Andrew had fallen for one of the most well-documented frauds in Thailand despite being an experienced traveler who claimed to be street smart. The criticism stung because it was accurate. Andrew had prided himself on being too savvy to be victimized, had literally posted about making genuine local connections just days before being defrauded by people pretending to be genuine local connections. His confidence in his own judgment, his belief that treating locals as humans rather than merchants provided protection, his ego about understanding culture deeply enough to distinguish authentic from fake, all of it had made him more vulnerable rather than less vulnerable. He spent days analyzing where he had gone wrong, trying to identify the moments when he should have recognized the scam. In retrospect, the signs were obvious: the convenient temple meeting, the perfectly aligned interests, the family business that just happened to be having special export day, the time-limited government licenses creating urgency, plus involvement that provided social proof, Niran's warnings that made the opportunity seem more legitimate rather than less. But in the moment, none of it had seemed suspicious. The scam had been baited with friendship rather than fear, with ego gratification rather than pressure, with apparent legitimacy rather than obvious sketchiness. Andrew had been selected as target not despite his confidence but because of it, not despite his experience but because experienced travelers often believe their experience makes them immune to manipulation. The $8,000 was substantial but not devastating. Andrew had savings and could absorb the loss without financial catastrophe. But the psychological damage was more significant. His confidence in his ability to read people and situations was shattered. His belief that his approach to travel provided protection was revealed as naive. His public persona as savvy traveler, who understood local cultures, was compromised by having fallen for a textbook scam. Other travelers he met in Bangkok shared similar stories, different variations of the gem scam, but same basic pattern of building trust over days before executing sale, same psychological manipulation through friendship and ego, same reluctance to report to police because technically the transaction was voluntary even if based on fraudulent representations. The gem scam was so successful, Andrew learned, precisely because it targeted tourists' desire to feel special, to believe they had access to insider opportunities, to see themselves as sophisticated rather than naive. The scammers were excellent psychologists who understood that people would ignore obvious warning signs if they believed they had been specifically selected based on their character and sophistication, rather than randomly targeted as vulnerable tourists. Andrew left Bangkok after 2 weeks with $8,000 less than he arrived with and substantially more understanding of how tourist scams operated not through threat or force but through friendship and ego, not through obvious sketchiness but through apparent legitimacy, not through targeting obviously naive tourists but through identifying confident travelers who believed they were immune to manipulation. Back in Austin, he wrote an article about the experience, honest account of how he had been scammed, analysis of the psychological techniques used, warning to other travelers that confidence and experience provided no protection against skilled manipulators who had perfected their craft over years of daily practice. The article generated strong response. Some readers were sympathetic, said they had fallen for similar scams in various countries, appreciated Andrew's honesty about his mistake. Others were critical, said he should have been more careful, that the scam was too well documented for experienced traveler to fall for, that his confidence had been arrogance rather than wisdom. Both responses were valid. Andrew should have been more skeptical, should have recognized warning signs, should have verified the gems before purchasing rather than trusting relationships built over 4 days. But the scammers were also extremely skilled. Their operation was sophisticated and professional. Their understanding of tourist psychology was expert level, and hundreds of other travelers fell for similar scams monthly despite similar levels of experience and caution. In Bangkok, Niran and Pla and their network continued operating, approaching tourists at temples, building friendships over several days, introducing family businesses and export opportunities, selling worthless gems at premium prices, disappearing before victims recognized they had been defrauded. The exact same scam Andrew experienced was being perpetrated dozens of times monthly, catching tourists of all experience levels and nationalities, generating significant income for organized networks that operated with near impunity because Thai law treated these transactions as civil misunderstandings rather than criminal fraud. The scam worked because it exploited fundamental human desires to be recognized as special, to be included in insider opportunities, to be validated in our belief that we understand foreign cultures, to be selected based on our character rather than our vulnerability. Niran and Pla were selling not just fake gems, but psychological validation, offering not just financial opportunity, but social inclusion, making tourists feel sophisticated rather than naive, even as they were being systematically defrauded. For travelers like Andrew, who prided themselves on avoiding tourist traps and understanding local cultures, the lesson was humbling. Confidence could be liability rather than asset. Experience could create blind spots rather than clarity. Belief in one's own sophistication could be exactly the vulnerability that skilled scammers exploited. The most scammed tourists were often not the obviously naive ones, but the confidently experienced ones who believed they were too smart to be manipulated. 3 years after the Bangkok scam, Andrew continued traveling and photographing. But with different approach, more skeptical, less confident, more willing to acknowledge he didn't understand cultures as deeply as he had believed, more cautious about relationships that developed too easily or opportunities that seemed too perfectly aligned with his interests. He had learned expensive lesson about the difference between genuine cultural connection and professional manipulation, about how friendship could be used as scam technique, about how trust could be manufactured through calculated investment of time and attention. The $8,000 he lost bought him education that was probably more valuable than the fake sapphires it ostensibly purchased, understanding that in tourist cities like Bangkok, there were people whose profession was identifying and manipulating visitors, whose skills were honed through daily practice, whose success depended on making targets feel special rather than threatened, whose operations were sophisticated enough to fool experienced travelers who believed they were immune to manipulation. The gem scam and its variations continued catching tourists because the fundamental psychology never changed. People wanted to believe they were special, wanted to believe they had insider access, wanted to believe their experience and sophistication provided protection. As long as these desires existed, scammers would continue exploiting them, would continue refining their techniques, would continue targeting confident travelers who believed they were too smart to be scammed, would continue generating income through friendship and ego rather than fear and force. If this story revealed how even experienced travelers fall for sophisticated scams, how confidence can be liability rather than asset, how friendship can be professional manipulation technique, how the most scammed tourists are often those who believe they're too smart to be scammed, I invite you to subscribe. There are more stories about travelers who learn expensive lessons, about the psychology of tourist scams, about how trust gets manufactured and exploited in cities where scamming tourists is organized profession. Thank you for listening to this uncomfortable truth about how sophistication provides no protection against skilled manipulation.